Alright everybody, it is your eye expert Dr. K here from the Black Hills Regional Eye Institute. We've got a case, made our side port already, going to inject viscoelastic, get a good wave, try and minimize those kind of spaghetti strands. Mark, 5mm mark. Really that's very important because depending on the size, the white to white, it can be very hard to tell what an appropriate size rhexis is, especially if there's good dilation. So having some sort of measurement device can be helpful. Try and make a nice square incision, no chevron sign, and that has to do with how you angle the blade and whether it's a dual bevel or single bevel blade. So keep that in mind if you're trying to improve your incision appearance. Then we'll start our capsular rhexis. And two things about the mark I made. One, I don't want to get much bigger than the mark, and but you don't have to follow it. It just is a measurement of size, and I know that I try not to get too much larger than that because then the optic won't be covered. Now we'll do our hydrodissection, hydrodelineation. And I always do hydrodelineation to separate that epinucleus from the nucleus. I think it just helps with the removal. Now I'll put a little extra viscoat in to protect that cornea. And then you don't forget to check your flow when you start off. We'll see if I do it here. Sometimes I forget to. But yeah, flow, good flow. You can kind of see it there. And then we'll get that phaco handpiece in. I've been shortening the tip that I use even more recently. We'll start off in quadrant, remove any viscoat in the anterior cortex, and then we'll start to sculpt. I usually do 2 passes, sometimes 3 depending on the density, and then crack and rotate, and then you can just chop. And depending on the density of the cataract, you might chop, one piece. You might chop it into a half. You might chop it into a third. That heminucleus, and then we'll just try and bring that out. And I take whatever comes. I don't try and force it, and I'll move on to the next quadrant. It would have been better to get a little more out of there, but this will all come out eventually. Try and keep your phaco handpiece relatively well centered. You don't want to go fishing for pieces. That's never a good thing. Now you can see the whole epinuclear or nuclear shell didn't come out there. There's some nucleus with the epinucleus, but it'll all come out here. Like I said, eventually video kind of stutters a little bit. Now epinucleus, get it up, get it out. I try and do most of the phaco in the bag. At the end with the epinucleus, you do have to kind of get things out of the bag a little bit, but got that whole nucleus out of there. We just got some cortex. And for cortical material, I usually try and pull somewhat tangentially. I usually start in kind of upper left quadrant and make my way around. There we go. See how much comes out. I'll take whatever comes and kind of slowly make my way around. As you can see, there's some of that dense, whiter cortical material that's in the fornix. That is harder to get out. It's stickier. It doesn't go into the IA handpiece as easily. Let's try and get this sub-incisional, which I do pretty much leave for last all the time. There we go. Get a little bit of those cortical strands, and then we will power wash the BSS. I use that to power the BSS to really get into the capsular fornix and to get any more cortical strands that are remaining out of there. Then we'll fill with a Provisc. You can see that's a pretty big capsular rhexis. It might be a little bit larger than the mark I made. We will sweep just to get any excess lens material out of there. I don't know how much it helps with posterior capsular pacification, but I do think it minimizes postoperative inflammation to liberate a little bit more of that lens material and then get it out of the eye when you do your IA. Putting in a Clarion lens. Just kind of wiggle it in there, use that second instrument to guide it. And I always use a Sinskey to position the lens, mainly because that trailing haptic tends to stick to the optic. I think our OR is pretty cool, and so the lenses don't unfold as quickly, and the haptic tends to stick to the optic. We're good with the IA. Always go behind the lens. Get any excess provisc out of there, and then we'll get that lens centered. Finish up with kind of viscoelastic removal mode, being sure to try and get into the angle, and then any remaining visco that's stuck up against the cornea. Looks good. Sometimes you'll see some strands on the posterior capsule, like the edge of the lens catches something stuck in the fornix and brings it more central. If that's the case, I'll usually go in and kind of get that out of there. All right, hydrate our incisions. You can hydrate the wall or the roof. If you hydrate the roof, you get a better appearance immediately post-op because there's not all of this swelling. It's harder to see, but then at the 1 day post-op, sometimes you'll have some bullae develop over the roof of the incision if you hydrate the roof of the incision too much. So do be mindful of that. So I don't mind hydrating the incisional walls in addition to the roof. We just want to get the incision sealed. You want to make sure that there's no nuclear fragments left. This is a good sized capsulorhexis. It's just a little bit larger. We will check a little bit larger than the optic. We'll check our incisions, and then we'll give some post-operative moxie. All right. Thanks for watching, everybody. You folks have a great day.